Hurricane Maria. How did you manage to not go out of business during that time? I'm super excited to be here with Sebastian, co-owner and founder at Tropicalia Puerto Rico. They have been recognized by Marriott, the property management company that is most likely for guests to book again, an award that they gained even though operators internationally applied for as well. Why do you think that you could have been more successful had you been in another market?
Puerto Rico is a very challenging market.
Having gone through Hurricane Maria, earthquakes, and roadblocks, how do you keep yourself going? How do you keep yourself moving forward?
I'm resilient. Why did I continue after that? Why didn't I move and apply at the Marriott? Because at that point, I still enjoy what I do.
Companies went out of business. How did you manage to not go out of business?
A lot of debt. It was like living in the Stone Age. The biggest advice that I can give to somebody listening is
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and where we interview entrepreneurs, investors, founders, operators, and leaders in the vacation rental and hospitality space so they can tell us about their stories, the lessons that they have learned along the way, as well as maybe some of the mistakes that they might have made along the way as well, so we don't have to make those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm super excited to be here with Sebastian. Sebastian is the co-owner and founder at Tropicalia Puerto Rico. They have a very successful vacation rental operation in the island of Puerto Rico with more than 50 properties under management. Among other things, they have been recognized by the likes of Marriott with an award of being the property management company that is most likely for guests to book again. And this is an award that they gained, even though this was something that, operators from many different markets, not only in Puerto Rico, but internationally applied for as well. And they gained this recognition. So we're going to be talking about the particularities of having a vacation rental operation, specifically in the island of Puerto Rico. We're going to talk about what it takes to create a memorable experience that people can remember forever, and we'll talk about the challenges and lessons as well that Sebastian and his team have gained from growing the operation to where they are today. So, Sebastian, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I think you're the second Sebastian I have on the show, although the other Sebastian was Sebastian. So officially, you're the first Sebastian other than me that is on this show. First of all, I want to start by knowing if you were to start all over again in this business, which you've been doing for the last 11, almost 12 years now. So you know a lot. If you were to start all over again, what, if anything, would you do differently, Sebastian?
So the first thing that comes to mind, and everything I want to say, I want to, give value. Especially, of course, I want to give value to the listeners who will listen to this in Puerto Rico. But the first thing I want to say is, if I were to start all over again, back when I started, I don't know, 2013, 2014 maybe, it would be to do it in a different, bigger, or more successful market. If I were to do it all over again, knowing what I knew now, I would start in somewhere like Orlando or Miami in 2013, 2014. That I would ride an amazing wave, and it probably would have. I probably would have been more successful.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's this saying, right, of a rising tide lifts all boats, or something like that. So, but why is that the case though? Tell us about, for anyone that's not familiar with the uniqueness and particularities of running an operation in Puerto Rico. Why do you think that perhaps you could have been more successful had you been in another market when you started back then?
Yeah. Puerto Rico is a very challenging market, and so maybe there's even a better place than say Miami or Orlando. This place might be somewhere surprising, maybe even like Ohio, but a place where the market is good, the market's expanding, and there's no problems. We have a lot of problems in Puerto Rico. Just today, I mentioned to you, I lost power 3 times today, just today. So, Akron, Ohio might have lost power once all of last year. I don't know, Miami probably didn't lose power. Maybe if there was a big storm. Actually, I can recall maybe last year they had at least power issues once, but something like that where there's less issues. It seems there's so many issues in this island that some bigger than others. Some that are easier to overcome, but it's a challenging market. What does that imply? If I lose power 3 times a day, little by little, electronic appliances will wear down. Central operating electronic boards on things like microwaves, and now everything is so electronic. It could be washers, dishwashers, clothes washers, dryers. They go bad. Air conditioners. Last week we had air conditioner techs. There was several stronger power surges last week. We had air conditioner techs replace electronic boards on like 6 or 7 air conditioners. This is time. This is money. This is manpower. Someone has to communicate this with guests. Someone has to communicate this with the service provider. We have to do all these coordinations. Then we take this to the owner. We have to factura. We have to send bills to the owners for all of these things, or cover it ourselves, depending on the circumstance. So, then there's larger things that to someone in a simple market, this is like, wow, I can't believe that. But there could be larger things. There could be Hurricane Maria. There could be everybody went through COVID. There could be earthquakes, which in late 2018 like wiped out my entire high season of 2019. This happened in like November or December of 2018. It was all over the news, earthquakes in Puerto Rico. And this is in November, December, and I was getting cancellations like January, February, wiped out. Totally empty calendars. March, people were canceling. Like, are there going to be earthquakes in March? I'm like, I don't know. Probably not. Right. But they canceled anyway, wiped out all my high season, everyone's high season, on the island. So it's a challenging market. Some things bigger, some things smaller, some things you can handle. For power outages, you can recommend to owners to go solar, which is excellent, or get a generator, a good option. Have power protectors, surge protectors, whole house surge protectors. But every property is different. Every owner is different. And these are all individual, conversations that take time convincing. Sometimes they don't listen to you, and it'll take, 3 or 4 bad reviews before the owners pay attention. So, if I were to start it all over again, I mean, I love this island. I'm here for a reason. I lived in Indiana. I lived in Boston, and I came back here for a reason. I love the island. I love the people. I love the weather. The weather's fantastic. I met you. I was outside. I work every day. I listen to the birds. The sun shines. It's glorious. It's so fantastic. But if I were to do it all over again, I've had a lot of roadblocks, being here that I would not have had. The trajectory would have been like this.
Mm-hmm.
Instead it's, like this.
Got it.
That's
super interesting. And what I find fascinating about everything you're saying is that these are all things that are outside of your control, right? So it's not like, you can do your best to try to prepare for it, prevent it, have everything in place, and yet, something can happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yet you've managed to, I mean, let's talk about the award you got from Mario just for a second. I mean, the fact that you have gotten such recognitions from guests, saying that you're the company that they're more likely to rebook at. At the end of the day, the fact that you've managed to keep those good reviews and that quality, I mean, there's something you must be doing right, which I think operators in markets around the world have a lot to learn from, in terms of like the fact that, there's something that can be done, I guess, despite something happening that's outside of your control. And I guess, what's your approach to that? So how do you deal with this kind of, situations that are outside of your hands, as it relates to dealing with the guests in such a situation?
You just got to continue. You got to keep going. There's really nothing else you can do. Um, and so the thing is
Like,
that
do
we
you
do
think
right.
do you think there's ways in which you can turn things around? Like, you can take something like that was a negative outside of your control, but because of the service component of how you approached it with the guest, it actually ends up turning the situation upside down into a
Yeah.
positive outcome?
Yeah. Yeah. So, the things that we do right really help in those situations. They are the normal ways that we want to do things. The customer service aspect of it, there's a lot of things that happen outside of our control. And so, like, I'm sure you have stayed in many Airbnbs, and I've stayed in many Airbnbs, just like personally. Every host is different, but talking about the customer service aspect of it, in good times and in bad times. So dealing with the things that are out of our control in bad times, right, has to be top customer service, quick responses, um, empathy. Trying to put ourselves in their shoes and doing the best we can. Sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes we get a Karen, and I'll power goes out. I'm talking with her, immediately after. I'm calling the power company. I'm giving her hourly updates. I'm sending her deliveries of flashlights, of goodies. It could be chocolates or things like that, Gatorades, waters, whatever. I say, hey, depending on what time of the day, hey, what do you guys like? What can I bring to you guys? I'll buy them dinner if it goes on for an extended period of time. Doing all those things sometimes isn't enough. You sometimes get a Karen and she's, just, it's never enough. And so those things, it doesn't matter. We have to keep doing what we do despite it all, just keep going in the same ways that we do it. So top customer service, as best as we can all the time. And what does that mean? Fast responses. Guests are really simple. They're just like a friend of yours. They want fast response on a text. They want phone calls. Hey, how you doing? So sorry that happened to you. Or hey, how you doing? I'm so glad to hear you had a great day. Both of those responses for me, it's the same. It's the same protocol. That we just have to keep doing how we do it.
And tell me something. So you personally, though, 12 years in, having gone through Hurricane Maria, having gone through all those earthquakes, and having gone through so many roadblocks like you were describing, how do you keep yourself going? How do you keep yourself moving forward? How do you manage to not throw in the towel and say, okay, I'm gonna move elsewhere. I'm gonna start a new business. I'm gonna do something else. Like, what has kept you personally going?
Uh, well, that's a really good question. And I ask myself this on hard days. But like, I guess who doesn't, right? But like, in general, I'm like a resilient person, and I started this business when things started getting really difficult. Was at a time when I'm not this is not a large organization. I don't have hundreds of employees, but it's not exactly a tiny operation either, where I'm the only person involved. And so why I keep doing it is really my team, the people who work around me, who I know rely on me. And then the other side, personally, is that this is what I've done for the longest period of time, and I'm not bad at it. I can't say that I'm the perfect property manager, or I'm the most amazing anything, but I'm not bad at what I do. We're not bad at what we do. And it's a good company with a good team. And when the first biggest roadblock, the first major roadblock, I guess it was about 6 or 7 years in, was Hurricane Maria. Prior to that, we had like Zika and chikungunya, it was minor things. but that was the first, major one where we were, like off the map for like unable to rent really for like, 6 or 7 months or 9 months in some properties. And so why did I continue after that? Why didn't I just, move and apply at the Marriott or something? Because at that point, it was what I had done the longest, and I still enjoy, what I do. I didn't, how do I put this? I used to be a journalist, and I don't think that I would be able to have the same life today that I do now, if I were to go, into journalism, even if it's what I really enjoy doing. Maybe one day I'll retire and then become a journalist again. Uh, and so, back when I was a journalist, I made $7.50 the hour. And even though I liked, my life, it wasn't really enough to have a family or to take care of my mom, what happened to her recently. So we keep going, and because it's what you must do.
Love it. Yeah, no, that's it. So sometimes it's the team that keeps you going. Sometimes it's just remembering that you've been doing this for so long, uh, and also it's just the right thing to do, right? To keep going. Now let's talk a little bit about what that looked like. I don't want to make this all about just the challenges of doing business in Puerto Rico, because of course, as you said, I've been there. I love the island. There's a reason why it's called La Isla del Encanto. So there's a reason why people love it so much. But yes, I mean, Hurricane Maria, it was just crazy. I mean, you're talking, like you said, completely off the map. You're talking, like essentially not being able to rent for months. How did you survive that? What was your game plan? How did you adapt? Like, I don't know, like it's hard for me to imagine, how hard that must be, first of all, but most importantly, the fact that you're still around means you did something right, because you survived. I mean, I'm sure some companies went out of business during that time. So how did you manage to not go out of business during that time?
Well, I guess a lot of debt.
Okay.
Uh, you know, uh, I'm thinking back, and I remember. So, and I mean this in the best possible way, but unless you've gone through something similar, and I do mean this in the best possible way, unless you've gone through something similar, it's really impossible to know, to sympathize exactly with what we went through. Um, and I mean this in the best possible way. And so what I mean by that is that it literally was like living in the Stone Age. Um, and so in not the Stone Age, I'll say it was like it was very how I imagine it is like very similar to living in, like, I don't know, not even the 19th century, maybe like the late 18th century. There is most like I'll never be able to experience something like that again, um, because like it involves an entire society where no, like you're living around thousands of people. San Juan's a million, so at least a million people around you, all living in the same conditions. No power, no water, no Wi-Fi, no cell phones, no telephones. Late 18th century. So like I remember the first day, like the day before, it was just like the day where I was having Zooms or whatever meetings, telebanking, like all the modern, everything, all the same shit as today. And the day after Maria, I went downstairs in my condominium, which at that time I lived in a nice condo in Santurce, and it was one of the major avenues of San Juan, of the city, and there's trees down blocking, and there's no power, and there's like curious people poking out their windows, and I thought, okay, well, the government, like, this is too big for people, like the government's gonna have to come and help. And day two, I was like, they're gonna come soon. Someone's gonna come soon. Day three, it's like, well, we can't watch the news. They can't deliver newspapers even. Like, I'm like, but we're gonna see fire trucks soon. It's got to happen. Nothing. No one came. nothing happened because nothing. It was inaccessible. It was totally inaccessible. And so like around day 5, people started accepting like the reality. And like I remember, like if I wanted to get in contact with someone, I would go to an area that I knew that they would be. Like for example, in Condado Center, I knew that my handyman would always hang out at the bar downstairs in that building. So I'd go and speak with the bartender, be like, hey, if you see Javier, let him know Sebastian, it needs this, and like leave him a little note or something to the bartender. And then I go back the next day, like, hey, Sebastian, how's it going? Javier was here. He left you this. Like, okay, well, he needs this for this apartment. All right, that's fine. He's doing well. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. He repaired this. Okay, cool. It was like the old days. And then there was no power either, so elevators didn't work, electronic doors didn't work. So if I wanted to go up and see Luisa, to talk about it, she's building president in that same building. Now I'm thinking about it. I just go up the stairs, knock on her door. She was there, she was not there. Hey, Luisa, how's it going? It was like the old days. So it's really it's impossible. It's impossible to know what it was like during that time. So I want to know a bit
Yeah.
about a
So
tangent
even
there.
even 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 the first, so the first few days is like you're hoping help will come. Day 5, let's say you're like accepting that, okay, this is new reality. Like,
You would barter like chainsaws and stuff. It was great. I have a friend visiting. I haven't said hi to him yet. His name is Jock, who happened to have been here staying. God bless him. Staying at a loft during Maria. And I remember telling everyone, like, you should go find a fly. You should go. And he was there. We were both young at the time. And he was there with his friends. It was like 6 or 7 guys. And he's like, no, I think it's just a hurricane. We're gonna be fine. And like on week 2, I saw him like with a machete going down the avenue, like chopping trees and moving them to the side to open, roads. Yeah, it's a crazy time.
and so, okay, but help me understand something, because you were doing arbitrage back then. Is that
Yeah,
correct? That was your original
yeah,
model. So not only do you
yeah.
have
That's
to
how I started.
realize like this is going on, and now you have to
Oh, Jesus, yeah,
adapt your lifestyle, but now it's like you're thinking, like, I have rent to pay, and like
yeah, and
tourism
mortgage, and
is,
so like,
or mortgage. So
yeah,
like, yeah, what was the process for you to
yeah, and
start
you had to keep.
assimilating, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah, so yeah. Then that is how I started in arbitrage. Before that was even like a word or a term to describe describe that. But yeah, you asked what it was about, how I got through it, and it was debt. And I remember, yeah, because you still had to keep paying this, and for a period of time, maybe like about a month or a month and a half, 4 to 6 weeks, there was no banks. You can't access like your bank account, because it's all online. The banks were closed. In the ATMs, you're only allowed to take out like $100 a day. The lines were very long. And but once the banking system got back online, you had to continue paying everything. So already you were in debt. You had to pay up until that moment with no income and no foreseeable income as well. And that was really challenging. So like how to get through it with debt, because every month you still had to keep paying, say, I don't know what it was at the time, 20 something $1,000 every month. And owners and to the bank, and on top of that, there was chargebacks, because I don't know how long you've been doing this, but like in the old days, you would take deposits from people, and there'd be contracts with old school, and so like people did chargebacks. Everyone canceled, of course, and if you pay by credit card, you did a chargeback, and the account goes to zero, and then it goes to negative. And despite that, you still had to continue paying people. So that was a real challenge. And so after Maria, I changed my way of doing business, and it was my first phase of changing, my first phase in adapting to a challenging environment. like this island. And I'm sure there's other challenging environments. I'm positive Colombia is going through a hard time right now with water. There, and I would love to know how they're doing it and how those hosts are dealing with this. Some parts of the city only have water on some parts of some days of the week, and
Yeah.
so with
You
this,
adopted your model. Is that
exactly,
correct? From there, you got into management.
exactly. With this, I started and making changes to how I did business for due to these challenges. I let go of some properties, the lowest earning ones, and the ones that were maybe sentimental to me, like my first apartment, which is where I started doing this. It's where I lived, where I lost my job, and where I was forced to get into Airbnb. And so I let go of it. It didn't make any money really. It was just there for personal reasons that I liked to go there and see it. So it
Hmm.
didn't make any money though. And so I think I only let go of 3 really. And I modified contracts on for other owners. So like the ones that were arbitrage at the time, I changed the contracts. I said, look, it's Maria, if this happens again, I'm not going to continue. And so I need a way to cancel. And so I changed the contracts on the ones that I rented. I don't know, it was like 7 or 8 owners that I kept at that time, and that I went forward. And then in COVID, which was like the second adaptation for a very difficult occasion, I pulled out that card. And basically I let go of all of them except for 2, which were the least expensive and the highest grossing units that were still mine. And yeah, and I still have those 2. So I changed it completely. And having your own properties, I'm sure you know this, you make much more money. But in these challenging markets, you really have to be hyper aware of how much risk you're willing to accept to make that money.
Absolutely, absolutely. So right now, for example, what does the process look like for you to accept homeowners? Because I'm guessing there's also a big element of expectation setting, with homeowners that you've learned, throughout the years. uh and so what does that look like as far as those conversations that you're having with maybe homeowners that either have recently bought or are looking into buying, and they want to have you be the manager. Are there certain things that you look for? Are there certain red flags that you can identify? Okay, this owner is not going to understand the reality of doing business here, therefore we're better off not taking him on as part of our management program. What does that look like for you currently based on what you've learned?
The first thing that comes to mind is probably the biggest, like, or the nicest advice that I can give to somebody listening who's starting out or relatively new, 1 or 2 years doing this, is like a red flag, someone who I do not take. If in my initial meetings with the person, with the potential client, they tell me this phrase, if they tell me the following phrase, it is a no-go. If they say, can we start how it is and then move forward down the line, I do these upgrades. If they tell me that, or any variation of that phrase, it's immediately no. And after that, basically, I will lose interest. Tell them like it's not going to work out, and maybe make up a different excuse, something that they'll understand, because that person won't understand my reasoning for that. So it doesn't work like that, basically. And you can't start and then move your way up because of the review system. And after the last Airbnb update in November, the review system is so strict that there's really no breaks for low quality or very basic cookie cutter properties, and or basic cookie cutter owners. There's just no breaks for them. Airbnb today is unforgiving to cheap, bland properties listings. So I learned that the hard way with a couple of different owners. who said, "Yeah, I'll upgrade the mattress. Yeah, I'll upgrade the windows. Yeah, that air conditioner is 20 years old. I'm gonna upgrade it." And the reality is, you'll never be able to make the money to upgrade it, because the first person comes in and it's like, "Oh, well, 4 stars because the mattress is 10 years old, or 4 stars because the air conditioner sucks, or the desk was dirty, or the hot water isn't hot enough, or the Wi-Fi isn't good enough. 4 stars." And then you start on a bad foot, and that listing will never be able to be successful. It'll never be able to get any of the awards that Airbnb is giving now. The guest favorite, the 1%, the 5%. You'll never get any of that, and so you'll always be in a downward spiral. You started at $250, 4-star reviews. Now you're at $200. Now you're at 4.3 rating, and now you're struggling, for $80, and now the owner really can't afford that new mattress. And so, before even getting into, an agreement with a property owner, if they tell me that, it's a no-go. That's a big red flag. And that's a really good piece of advice for new property managers.
Of course.
The other thing that could be a red flag is personality. And so, my contracts are very easy to get out of. Property management contracts with homeowners are very easy to get out of, from the owner side and from my side. And it's because, I would have never worked with this person at this point, and they would have never worked with me. And so if the personalities clash, then that also will never, work out. He or she will never be happy. And I really want, that's the whole point of what we're doing, not just for the guests, but for the owners. The whole point of what we're doing is for my clients to be happy. I want, my homeowner clients to be happy, and for them to make enough money that goes in their bank accounts without them having to worry or think about it. They just know that I'm taking care of it, and that they're making money, and that their property's in good hands. That's what I want. But if we're going to have a personality clash, and the homeowner's not going to be happy, they're always going to be worried, like, "Oh, I wonder, what he's doing today. I wonder. Yeah, then it's probably not, going to work out. If they're not happy, they're going to end up making me unhappy, which is not going to be a good reflection for the guests."
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's so important what you just said there about not just, trusting that it's going to be upgraded later and it's going to be done later, because to your point, there's going to be, there's going to be no resources, for them to do so, even if they wanted, once they get in. And you're right about describing the new, I always say, Airbnb used to reward good service, and that was that, but now it's punishing, bad service, or bad reviews, to a level that's unforgiving, like you said, completely unforgiving. Now, how has that changed the way you approach, the way you run your business? How has that, changed the way you train your team, maybe the way you the expectations that you have for your team, as far as, the relationships with the guests? Like, is there anything that you could say, like, hey, since the guest favorite badge was introduced, since I'm no longer able to relaunch listings because of the circumvention policy, like, have there been things that you have changed in the way you do things since then?
Yeah. And I mean, the long answer to that is that Airbnb changes 4 or 5 times per year. And one of the reasons why the homeowners who I work with, my clients, trust me and go with me, is because maybe 10% of what I do every day, or 15% of what I do every day, is just monitor slight changes that may be happening in Airbnb. So, I'm lucky, and there's people who have more than me, obviously, but I'm lucky that I don't have a little bit of listings. And so I have a smattering of listings throughout the island, from 1-bedroom listings to 7-bedroom homes, from very basic economic to super luxe. And so in San Juan and across the island. So I can see and feel small changes within Airbnb, not necessarily before they're announced, but as it's happening. And so it's my responsibility to be aware of these things, be aware of these changes, and know the Airbnb TOS, terms of service, like it's the law. And like if I was a lawyer going back to school and rereading, all the updates, I have to know the Airbnb vision and specific terms, like as best as possible to a T. The homeowners who are doing other things, running their other businesses, or are retired on vacation, they don't have the time for this. They can't be responsible for this. It must be me. So Airbnb changes 4 or 5 times a year. Some updates are very big. Some updates are major. And so I'll have, whole team meetings about this, saying, this needs to change. This is happening. This change is happening. They did a summer update. They did a winter update that totally changes everything. We're going to have to shift and refocus on doing these other things now. That happens. And sometimes it's back end stuff. Sometimes, it's minor changes. I can think of one, a minor change that they did a couple of years back was they had something which has like since then like fallen, not very important anymore. But they had like little icons saying like great view, mansion, farmhouse. They're still around. They're not as important as it was when it was launched, of course, when it was a new product. But when it was a new product, I went through all the listings. There's back end stuff. I went through all the listings. I dedicated maybe about a week, just focused on it, thinking, okay, what categories can this be in? What photos do I change in? How do I change the listing description for all of the properties? Doing all these things, something that Airbnb has always told me throughout the years in all my meetings with them is any new initiative that Airbnb does, go for it. That's what they're going to be focusing on. And so the algorithm will favor those who play in to their vision, those who ride the wave, whatever the wave is at the moment. The wave changes 5 times a year. Whatever the wave is, you got to ride it. So that's how, you do your best to stay on top.
Yeah, of course, be an early adopter. I mean, we saw it with the co-hosting marketplace, how those that
Yeah.
were able to get in early before they stop accepting people temporarily, have been getting a ton of business, from it, as far as leads and whatnot. And then yes, when we're reviewing listings, we always say that those little details matter and they add up. And sometimes people are like, well, what does it matter if I have a caption? What does it matter if my photos are tagged? What does it matter if I have all these amenities or not? It's like, well, you're just telling Airbnb you're on a complete listing. Now, there's two people out there, there's two types of operators out there. There's those that will hear this and they'll say, okay, perfect, let me play by Airbnb's rules. And then there's those that will say, well, Airbnb, I don't want anything to do with Airbnb. I want to do everything possible to try to limit my dependency of Airbnb, right? I want to try to go multi-channel. I want to try to go direct, which in a way is tricky, right? Because part of their strategic vision and part of what they prioritize as far as the algorithm goes is not just everything that we just described, but it's also availability and exclusivity, right? Which they want. But if you do that, then you do put yourself at risk, especially with how unforgiving they have become, and especially knowing that so many things can happen that are outside of our control, and we have guests that are unfair and whatnot. Then that really leads to, like, operators being in a very tricky position in the middle of deciding, like, what do I do? Do I play by Airbnb's rules and hope that they'll have my back, or do I kind of like have my best interest in hand and try to diversify and try to go direct, etc. So what has been your philosophy around that, channel distribution wise, going direct? How have you approached that?
Yeah. So this is probably going to be the next, between 1 and 3 years, it's probably going to be a big conversation. I've been doing this long enough to where when I started, Airbnb was maybe 10% of the vacation rental market here in Puerto Rico, at least. And now, so I was there with Vacation Rental 411. I was there when FlipKey was dominant, when VRBO, HomeAway, when HomeAway was like king of the world, and now it's Airbnb's turn. This won't be forever. It won't be forever because I've already seen other ones that claims to have been forever. Nothing's forever. It will come. Airbnb will have its time. Today, it is Airbnb's king. At least in this market, it's at least 80% of the market. So unfortunately, for my case and for my clients, we have to play by Airbnb's rules. But at the same time, prepare for the unexpected. No one's gonna know what will be the tipping point for the end of Airbnb. They could be they do a summer update and it scares off all the hosts and everyone's out of Airbnb. Or they do a summer update and there's huge backlash that was unexpected on the guest side and all the guests flee from Airbnb. And then VRBO swoops in with a marketing campaign and that's it. That's the end of Airbnb. Who knows? No one knows. So you really have to prepare, do what's today and prepare for the worst. So we have a direct booking. We have like geolocation centric. So like there's direct booking sites for all of the listings. There's direct booking sites for specific locations. If we operate in certain complexes, we can buy out URLs, create direct booking sites for all the listings in that property, put ourselves on Google Maps. Go to VRBO, Marriott. I'm one of only 3 people on Marriott in the island. I'm afraid of booking.com, so I cannot suggest to go to booking.com. It's like a wild horse. But there's there's some new ones too, which are really nice. And I'm on all the new ones that have reached out to me. I'm on them because why not? Who knows what's the up and coming, champion? It's more likely to be VRBO than a smaller person, but I'm gonna get on board. So it's important to do both, and that's more work, but it's important to be there. Otherwise, you'll lose out. And something that happened last year with Airbnb, they started shedding listings. They had what was it? Flatline demand. They had equal year-over-year demand, but 17% year-over-year growth in inventory. And so they started shedding listings. About 2 bad reviews, and you were delisted, unable to be relisted because of their AI, which catches duplicate listings. So due to that, and especially because Airbnb is still king here in Puerto Rico, you have to do both. I used to be. 3 years ago, I told Airbnb that I was exclusive to Airbnb, and I was. But today, it's not possible. I just can't. It's a big risk.
Mm-hmm.
And they're unforgiving in their takedown policy. There's no coming back for it. You can write an appeal. I don't think it really does anything. I'm certain it doesn't do anything. If 2 bad reviews are caused by 2 power outages, totally out of your control. Out of your control. Generators aren't allowed in condominiums. This condominium, it doesn't have a generator. 2 people leave a 2 or 3 star review due to this. Full refund. I have an example. Full refund. I'm thinking about one specific property right now. Full refund. Still left a 2-star review. Sebastian was great host, great communication. Gave me a full refund, but power went off, and it was really inconvenient because I couldn't find a hotel to stay in. So they took down the listing. I can't put it back up. That was a listing that had 180 reviews. It was like, I don't know, it wasn't perfect score. It was like 4.92 or 4.93 or something like that. It's not bad either. It was with me maybe 5 or 6 years. Power went off twice, 2 weeks in a row. 2 bad reviews. Gone. No chance to put it back up. So, what are you going to do? Go to VRBO. Book's great with VRBO. It's also on the Marriott. Book's fine there too.
Wow. Wow.
You have to be
what
dynamic.
about direct bookings? What has worked for you there? Like, have you been able to really find like a channel? Is it mainly retargeting past guests? Is it investing in PPC, or or SEO, or like as far as the direct booking side of things? You've had many years to establish the brand and whatnot. So what has worked as far as driving those direct bookings for you?
This is a good question, and it's advice because I'm saying it as advice, but I don't know if it's good advice or not. And I don't know what the real answer, to this will be, because I'm sure a marketing professional will say, no, you got to pay pay per click, and this is the way to go. But I did that. I did that for a while, and I really didn't have a lot of luck because you have to have ROI if you're paying, for marketing. And with the idea of marketing, something that I've always told all my clients is, if we do well, Airbnb has a multi-million-dollar marketing budget for Puerto Rico. If we do well, we're writing a multi-million-dollar marketing budget that I'll never have the ad spend for. So we have tried pay-per-click, Google pay-per-click, websites and stuff like this, and getting the ROI back to make it worthwhile, it just wasn't there. We did it anyway, and it was like neutral, always, all the way. If I spent $600 in ads, maybe I would make 1,000. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, it pays for itself, but it's not, I don't know if it's really worthwhile from like an efforts, standpoint.
Effort to
So something that
reward
I have,
ratio is just not there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So an ad person might say, well, spend more money. I don't know
Mhm.
if this is really what I would, do. Well, something that I have had success for. So this is the advice part, in direct bookings. Something that I have had a good luck with is, geolocation. The concept of geolocation. So, there's two complexes. I'll use these as examples. There's two complexes that I work in. One is Solomar and Isla Verde, and the other one is Condado Center in Condado. In Condado Center, I have 5 properties, and in Solomar, I have 7. And so, we put a little Google Maps like drop in, made a direct booking link and website for that building and for the other building as well. And we've had, fairly good luck there. I can't say it's more than Airbnb, but it's more than the pay for a click. And all you have to pay is the URL, the website. I don't know. You don't have to pay anyone for SEO. Just take a little course, pay $50, learn a thing about SEO, and you can pretty much do it yourself. It's not so hard. And we've had good luck. Maybe in each of those cases, we probably get 1 or 2 bookings per month, direct, which saves a little bit, on transaction fees. It saves the guests a lot, and if it goes well, and I hope it does, Google, collects reviews, and if it goes better, then maybe it's good. So it's not better than Airbnb, but I'm very glad that I'm there because one day Airbnb won't be.
Interesting. Wow, that's a very interesting perspective, and it's true. I mean, you see it with tools, you see it with platforms, you see it with nations. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nations go up and down as well in history. There's no nation that has been in power for forever. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
why would a company be in power forever? So
Yeah. Ray Dalio could do a book just about online OTAs. Exactly.
that's the book I was thinking about. The Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. Great, great, great
Yes,
book.
exactly. Very good. Love Mr. Dalio. But
If
it's the
he's
same.
listening to this, we love you, Ray Dalio. I really
Absolutely.
doubt he will.
Yeah, I don't think so. But if he does, hello. Eh, but it's the same. It's the same. Nothing is forever. Look at Sears. Look at Kmart. You know, at the time, at the peak of HomeAway, I could have imagined no bigger, greater online travel agent OTA than HomeAway.
Huh.
And it was fantastic. I loved them too. But things happen, and now they're not.
What do you think it was though? If you look at how they lost, so to speak, that domination uh, position that they had? What do you think they did wrong, or is it just Airbnb did all the right things, or do you think there's something that maybe HomeAway could have done to stay on top and put on a better fight?
Yeah. I don't know if Airbnb is like this today because they're a public company today, and it's not Brian Chesky. Now it's the board. But what they did was really scrappy. It was doing the right thing. It was seeing an opportunity and going for it faster than a larger corporation could do so. That's what they did. So I can only speak to Puerto Rico market, because there are markets in the States that are still dominated, that have always been dominated by other OTAs, not Airbnb. But I can only speak to Puerto Rico, to this market, and that's Hurricane Maria. In Hurricane Maria, HomeAway, VRBO was doing advertising and really pushing Puerto Rican market. And during Maria, they pulled out, and it's a logical thing. Pull advertising, pull market, just pull everything out. They're not going to have any business for 6 months. Like, that's logical. Airbnb swooped in. They swooped in, and it took over. And and 6 months later, when things were pretty much back to normal, it was like the putting a sheet up and putting a sheet down. And when you put the sheet down, now it's Airbnb. It was just Airbnb. All my bookings were Airbnb. Before it was 10-15% of bookings were Airbnb. Afterwards, 90 or more.
Interesting. And we're just talking to talk here, but what do you think it is that makes it so that there's still, to your point, markets in the US where VRBO remains the leader, for example? Like, what do you think it is that makes it so that there are markets that where this hasn't happened?
Probably older markets. I don't have Facebook anymore. I have Facebook, but I'm not like active on Facebook anymore because I changed my phone last year, and I never re-uploaded Facebook, and like my life got so much better. I just haven't done it anymore. But before, I used to be pretty active on many different Airbnb and vacation rental property manager groups online. And in one of the discussions that I remember pretty well, we were discussing this. And so, like I was saying, like, there isn't any market that still uses a HomeAway like they used to. And some older lady came on, and she's like, Myrtle Beach, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, it was like Hilton Head or something like that. A very like classic American, where maybe grandma and grandpa, book year after year to bring their family down. Probably those markets. It's probably those markets who, and it makes sense. My mom doesn't have an Airbnb account. We're taking her on a trip for her 75th birthday this summer, and I mean I'm doing all the bookings. I'm booking Airbnb, but she doesn't have an account. She's if I tried to explain it to her, I don't think she would, like, it's not there. I'm sure she'd be able to download it and sign on. But on a bigger scale, older people doing what's comforting for them. Maybe they've always, for decades, booked on VRBO. They don't have it on their phone because they don't do. They have it on their little bookmark, on their desktop, on their Windows 98, computer, on their home office. And they do it year after year. It's probably those markets. Probably. That's a guesstimation.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And then so that it therefore becomes a matter of like, how will VRBO captivate the younger generations, because otherwise it's just a matter of time until there's just not, the market's just not going to be there if they're only relying on the people that have been using them for years that are older and whatnot.
I think that it's starting to happen. And, that's sort of like the issue with like a larger corporation, because, VRBO, HomeAway VRBO is owned by Expedia now. And, which is not a new thing, but they're owned by Expedia. And so it's like Airbnb is a public company now. And so it's not Brian Chesky behind, as the board. And other people make, smaller decisions like this, marketing budgets. But I think it's happening because starting a couple years ago, VRBO started a new advertising campaign, and maybe related, maybe not related. But this year, I am seeing more bookings on VRBO than I had the year before. And last year, I saw more bookings on VRBO than I had the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
So, they might be reaching out to new consumers, and that's what it is. New markets, new consumers. That's what it is. So Airbnb did this for decades, and that's why their growth is like this, and VRBO didn't. So maybe they're doing that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now let's talk a little bit about one of the things that you mentioned to me that at the end of the day is what really makes you most passionate about what you do, and also it's something that you even mentioned to me, like it made your day when we spoke about it, which was this guest that I believe you had hosted years ago or something, and then when they were looking for a property, they recognized you, and they really remember the memories, the experience they had with you, and you said that it made your day, your week, or whatever. So uh, yeah, tell us a little bit about how maybe that might, going back to our previous conversation, be one of the reasons why you also keep going. Those unforgettable,
Yeah.
experiences that you can create for people. And yeah, what's the meaning that has for you in the way you do business?
So that sort of brings it back to like the first thing of like what keeps us going, and it's that's something for me personally. I really like seeing the people around me happy. I like seeing my guests happy. Obviously, personally, I like seeing my wife and my dog, my family. But I really like seeing my guests happy, and I like seeing my clients happy. It just makes me happy. I'm happy that they're happy, and this comes through, and it's like a full circle thing. What you mentioned is true, and it did really make my day, made my week. Most recently, someone who stayed in a loft, called me and looking for property management solutions here. That he was looking to buy a place in Puerto Rico. He got a really good deal, $250,000 for a place in Condotta's fantastic. And he's calling around people looking for property managers, and he's like, "Hey, by any chance is this Sebastian? You used to have a loft." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Wow, man, like I stayed with you maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, and it was fantastic. We used to go every year. It was like the best time of my life. I loved it. Thank you. You were the best." Like that really, obviously he's a client now. That really makes my day. And so there's 3 clients of mine who are previous guests, who they love the experience so much that they called me to trust me with their property. Robert's another one. I love Robert. He was coming down, I don't know, for several years before buying a property here, and yeah, and he always reached out to me when he came down. He was like, "Sebastian, you always treat me right." So I'm thinking of other people now as well. It really makes my day. It makes me happy to know that the guests are happy, and that my clients are happy, and that's sort of what what keeps us going. It's so important, and also going back, like you have to differentiate yourself in today's OTA market, and this is one of the ways that you can differentiate yourself. There's many, like, I don't say lame property managers, but there's lots of property managers who just don't care. Maybe they'll clean a property, make sure it's fine, and that's it. Here's the check-in instructions. Have a great time. Goodbye. And that's fine. That works. But you are no different than 1,000 other properties who do the same thing. Nobody is going to remember you. You had a great time in Puerto Rico, but that's it. You didn't have a memorable time. You didn't have the time of your life. You didn't have a time you're never going to forget. And there's many components to an experience like that, but one of them must be customer service. It must be the person on the other line talking to you. It's not always on the phone, It could be text or messages. Just, someone when you wake up, hey, how's it going? It's going to be a sunny day today. Check out this beach. Like that doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen. Things don't have to happen, but that you go out and you do them anyway. That's what sets you apart in the customer service realm.
Yeah,
That makes me
absolutely.
happy.
Yeah, you go the extra mile, and it's funny because the little details like these oftentimes. Um, so there's things that when they're there, you appreciate and you feel grateful for. Uh, but in a way you kind of take for granted, but then when they're not there they ruin your experience, and so it's
Exactly.
also those fundamentals that cannot be forgotten.
That's so good, and it's so true. You know, uh, Something that I like to tell people is that no one leaves a review for like an okay time. People leave reviews for a bad time or like an spectacular time. Like we
Mhm.
went, like, but that's the bar down or the bar up. Like, and it's crazy. I've been doing this so long that people used to ask me, like, oh, do I bring my own sheets? Do I bring towels? Like, do I bring pots and pans? I literally remember in my first apartment, checking things in, checking people in, and people helping people, because it was the old days. Now I do this in person, helping people bring up like sardenes, like their pots and pans that they brought full of things, and their sheets and their towels. And today, I literally got a message the other day saying like, "Hey Sebastian, thanks for the water and the beer, but I don't see a bottle of wine. And usually when I go to Airbnbs, I have a bottle of wine. Am I not looking in the right place?" And so
Okay.
yeah. I laugh, but like this is where we're going. And so like those things that people take for granted, like literally in the old days, people would ask me towel, sheets, people would ask me, do I bring soap and shampoo? Today they ask me like, oh, please have Dove shampoo there because I like Dove shampoo, you know? So those things that people are accustomed to that are extra, that's extra. And I spend a lot of money on soap and shampoos and all these extra goodies. But when they're not there, then it's a terrible experience. So that's like the bar down. If you're not, if you don't
Mhm.
do you don't do those things, which to you are not basic, to you they're extra. Like, to me they're extra. This is like, I buy specific, shampoos that are enough, they're better, right? Because that's extra. But if I don't do that, that's like, to the guest, that's nothing. That's terrible.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the bar. So like every year in this, you can frame this as like every year is harder because every year you have more expectations, with the bottle of wine thing. Am I going to implement bottle of wine in each of the properties in addition to all the extra goodies? I don't know, probably not today. But
Mhm.
Jesus, who knows in 3 years what the guest expectation, is going to be. But whatever it is, we at least have to meet that bar and think of creative ways to sobrepasar, to go above that.
Yeah, I mean that's so interesting because another one of the things with this review systems and whatnot is that it's a lot easier when you have less properties because because
Yeah.
of an averages game. It's a numbers game, and so not only that, but you have one property, you can bake cookies for your guests if you want. You can even go and hand it out yourself, and so it's like, well, of course you're going to get those amazing reviews, but now if you have to do this for 60 properties, now it's like, okay, where do you store the cookies? Who's supposed to bring it there? Do we need a storage facility? Like all these different things. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
scale this mindset of going the extra mile? How do you scale, this idea of like doing things that the guest is not expecting?
Oh
It's
yeah.
hard enough with one property. How do you do that with 60?
This is a really good question because I imagine anyone who is getting into this game today as a property manager, isn't doing it with the expectation that they're going to only have 1 or 2 properties in their lifetime. If it's going well for them, if they're going and they're baking cookies and they're getting 5-star reviews because they're obviously you bake cookies, if they're doing this, and they're making money and they're getting good reviews, and maybe now other clients are reaching out to them, people have the expectation to grow. Like, it's a very American thing. You don't want to limit yourself to 1 or 2 properties. You see yourself with 100 properties or 200 properties or 1,000 properties, or selling yourself. That's a goal. So that's this is a really good question. I'm the 3rd largest Airbnb superhost on the island, and every year it's harder and harder and harder to do that, because for me to bake, I would have to own a bakery, and maybe that's the next thing. And maybe in a couple of years, if that happens, I'm gonna have to buy a bakery, but every year we're thinking about new things. This week, actually, and we do this every now and then, but this week, actually, one of the things that we're doing is we're scanning reviews, not of our, well, yes, of ours, but the purpose of the exercise is not to scan our reviews. We're scanning other reviews. We're scanning the reviews of the top properties on the island to see what are standout amenities, what are possible or potential changes in guest expectations. What are people talking about? What do they like? What do they don't like? What are the keywords they talk about? Children's speech choice. This is an easy win. This is something I can do. I can't bake cookies for 60 properties, but I can buy children's speech choice for 60 properties. So this is a cheap win. Other things, as well. But so we did this, I think, in December, and so we added sunblock and bug spray, and so we're doing it again now. How do you stay on top? And the thing is, like, well, you got to be agile. Someone once told me that, and I am probably not as agile as he is, but someone who I like a lot, really, he's a great guy. He does property management as well, and he told me he's very agile, and he is. I'm not as agile as him, but you must be agile in this industry, because it changes. Airbnb changes every 5 or 6 times a year. So what's the new direction, and how does this influence guest expectations? Whatever direction, whatever vision they implement, and all their properties and all their property managers and all their homeowners, 6 months down the road is going to affect guest expectations. So I'm not agile enough to assume that, but I am smart enough to realize that I must be agile enough to react to that.
Absolutely. And I want to end with just talking a little bit about homeowner acquisition. So of course, if you do a good service, in theory that should lead to referrals, and that should lead to new business with word of mouth and whatnot. But are there any other techniques or approaches or channels that have worked for you in terms of adding new homeowners to your management portfolio?
There's a good question. I mean, the short answer is no. There's nothing that I can advise on this. Word of mouth has always. When we first, did I tell you how I started this business?
Please.
No. So I lost my job at the old cable company, OneLink it was called, and Liberty bought OneLink, and they fired all the local people. That was my day job, but paid the bills. I was a journalist at nighttime. It doesn't pay the bills. And so my grandmother, who is dead now, rest in peace, she had started doing this new thing called Airbnb in her home in New Mexico. And she said, well, now that you don't have a job, I know you don't have any savings for your rent, but why don't you do this thing that I'm doing, and at least do it for a week, get enough money for your rent. Maybe next week you'll find a job. Oh, but this is 2013, and there were no jobs anywhere. So anyway, I did that, and I put 1 week in my apartment for rent, for what my rent was. $500 was my rent, and I rented it for $500. And I slept in my car that week. Then I slept in my car the next week, and then the week after that, because people were booking my apartment and they really liked it. Got good reviews, and people started booking. And about 2 months in, I got really tired of sleeping in my car and showering at the gym. My back was starting to hurt. So I asked the owner of the property. Airbnb wasn't a thing at the time. I asked the owner of the property if I could rent another apartment. He's like, "You got $500?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I gave him. I got the second one, and then people started asking me, "Hey, wait, how do you make money? Like, you don't." You don't work at the cable company anymore. Like, how are you getting by? Like, how do you make money? And it was word of mouth. It was talking. Hey, well, I started doing this, and maybe I can do it for you. Well, and the economy was very bad back then, so it was okay. The conversation naturally always went like, well, I have this place that I did this is the old days. I did a second mortgage on my home. And I have a place in Cabo Rojo, or I have a place in Fajardo that I'm not using, that the bank's about to take away or whatever. We never use it. Can you do something with this property? I'm like, yeah, I think I can do something with this property. And as I started getting more myself, so renting more properties, eventually buying, people around the area would ask me, what do you do? I'd always be there fixing up the apartment. At the beginning, I would clean myself, or I would be there to check in each of the guests. And so, I guess still today, it's a pretty political thing in condominiums. Like, you got to make friends with all the old ladies in the condominiums, or else they're gonna be against you. So word gets around, and it's word of mouth, and that's really how it's been all this time. Doing good service, being nice, making friends, and talking. People ask you, what do you do? It's a natural connection. How can you help me? Who are you, and how can you help me? And if you do well, then you'll continue. This year, so this is why I don't think this is advice. This year, I'm doing something different for the first time. The government's laying off some people. So I have some more than what I thought. Clients who work for the government, who are spooked, so or have sold their homes already. And so for the first time, I'm considering advertising. To do this, I have never wanted to advertise, because to do this, like, you really have to have an excellent team. You have to have an excellent product. And I have a pretty good product, and I think I do have an excellent team. So I this year, for the first time, due to this, what I just mentioned, we're probably going to advertise. But prior to this, and especially if we're starting out, the proof of concept is attraction, magnetism. The proof of concept is that people are attracted to you because you're doing so well. Mm-hmm. That's proof of concept. If you're doing so well, people will want to do well as well.
Of course.
That's really, if you're starting out, there's no, if you're starting out and you're advertising, something's wrong.
Interesting.
You don't need to. Do a proof of concept first. Get a good, good corporate structure, a good team together. Make sure it's excellent, because you might not do well later if it's more than what you can take.
Of course. Now, I think that the interesting question there becomes, when is a good time to start advertising, right? Because you've been doing this for 12 years and you're going to start advertising now, right? So could it be that because you're so perfectionist, you've always thought that the product needs to be a little bit better, and it's a never-ending process to do product improvement, right? So then how do you think about, like, what should be the right time to start advertising in that case?
Yeah, totally, 100%. And going back to the cookies thing, it's the cookies. That's like, before when I was doing and the problems really, like, at the beginning I told you, like, if I would have started Miami, like my trajectory would have been like this. Instead it's like this. So like the problems, right? If you can solve problems quickly and correctly and well, and if you can be agile quickly, correctly, and well, and correctly, because for what do you do those two things in an incorrect way? It's a lot of effort for nothing. But like now, or what we did in December, where we investigated, did this little investigation, this little exercise, what we do, and we discovered that the best thing for us at the moment was to buy sunblock and sunscreen, for all the properties moving forward. Well, you have to have a system in place to carry that out at scale. 62 properties have to receive the same thing. It has to be the same good product all across the board. Can you do that? If you can do that, then yes. Before, it was in-person check-ins. Before COVID, and not all the properties had in-person check-ins, but the best properties did. Today, it's like no one likes in-person check-ins for the flexibility of things. It's more of a detriment than anything else. But before it was not. Especially for older visitors, they expected and wanted that. And so, I was thinking to myself, how can I, for those older guys who want to be like, hugged, who want to see a young boy carry up their bags, their maletas, and they want that. They want to converse with them. They want to be able to take the opportunity to invite me for coffee. Well, how am I going to get their 5-star review? If that's the mentality of, so now I don't have to worry about that, but the scale is the limiting factor. If you have the infrastructure where you can carry out, this is where you can advertise. If you have the infrastructure to carry out, betterments, agile betterments, or repairs at scale, then you can advertise. That speaks to your team and your corporate structure.
But do you think you waited too long before starting to advertise?
I don't. Do I think I waited too long? I don't think that I waited too long, because everything happens for a reason.
Of course,
God's plan is perfect. But could I have started advertising before, or would I have wanted to? I don't think so. For the same reason that, like, we went back to the beginning, like, if I was in Miami, totally, because I know my trajectory is going to be like this, no matter what, because I'm not going to lose power. Because if I get a hurricane, the president's going to come in and revamp my neighborhood immediately. Because if there's a chilling temperatures, somehow, some way, the state is going to turn this and flip it into a tourism opportunity. I don't have any of these luxuries. In Puerto Rico, we're all for ourselves. The new tourism director is no good. Like, we're in it. We're in it for ourselves. It's like, if we can run, we just have a lot. It's more responsibility on us. So I don't think I would have wanted to before this moment, and I wouldn't have been able to afford the team that I have today when I had 10 properties. Actually, I feel I don't want to say I feel bad for people getting into the game today, but I am concerned for people who are getting into the property management business today, because it's so much harder today than it was when I started. So, like, to do what I do costs, I don't know, $11,000, $12,000, $13,000 a month, just in like back end stuff, not cleaning, not repairs, just the infrastructure needed to do that at scale. At 10 properties, I can't do that. Every evolution of mine is an investment. I could do, it's maybe will sound bad, or I don't know, it's going to sound annoying, but I could do everything that happens in my business. I can communicate with guests. I can do repair. I've remodeled bathrooms before. I can buy a snake, and to unclog toilets. I can clean properties. I can get the 5-star reviews from the old ladies, all of that. But every investment into all of those steps, every investment costs money. It'll cost me $2,500 a month to get a good person to respond to guests. It'll cost me X amount of money per month to have a back-end worker doing all the annoying government requirements. It'll cost me X amount to have someone talk to suppliers. It'll cost me this. It'll cost me that. And with 10 properties, you can't do it. So, would I be able to move in an agile way? I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable with it, at least, because I want my clients to be happy. I want my guests to be happy, and that really is more important than scale. If you do all this well, if you have a good corporate structure, whether it's today or in the future, like now, it took me 12 years of ups and downs to get to today, in an organic way. I wouldn't want to sacrifice a good quality for people who rely on me every day. I would like to see Robert, my ex-guest, now client, send me, Sebastian, I saw that 5-star review. Great going. I would much rather see that, because I get more of those. It's magnetism. Other people will come. I'm third largest superhost in Puerto Rico. I'm doing well with the Marriott. I get good reviews. Right now, I was checking yesterday. I was checking this because of a super hosting, but I was checking yesterday, and for the past 30 days, I've had nothing but 5-star reviews. That really makes me feel good. I feel good about the guests, and I feel good about my clients. Would I sacrifice that to make an extra couple $1,000s a month? No way. I will move up and grow organically, without sacrificing the quality that I want to provide.
Way to go, man. Way to go. Sebastian, it has been amazing to have you on. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
I could keep you here for 2 more hours, and we would have fun things to discuss. This has been very insightful. Hope the audience has taken notes as much as I have, inspiring and educational. So yeah, I really, really appreciate you taking the time, Sebastian. I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. I really appreciate it.